perhaps you can explain.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just before we start, I'm going to be going live on YouTube, but just so you know, you've got this set in front of you. There is a button, there's a little image of what looks like someone speaking. If you press that, it will come up red, and the sound will come through the speakers and onto the YouTube. Just remember to turn it off when you've finished. But yeah, apart from that, I think we're ready to go.
Religious education, known as Sacre. This is a shorter than usual Sacre meeting, which will finish at 5 p.m. Because alongside the Sacre meeting, we will be considering a new religious education syllabus under the name of Agreed Syllabus Conference. Both this meeting and the conference are open to the public and are streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel. I am aware that there are people in the room who are new, so I'm going to ask for brief introductions, please. I'll start with myself. I'm Councillor Cecile Wright, the Chair of Sacre.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm Shaheen Parek. I'm the Education Officer in the Education team at the local authority, and I'm supporting Sacre.
I'm Ian Nicholson, National RE Advisor for RE Today.
My name's Jack Roberts, and I'm the Democratic Services Officer here today.
Alison, please.
Okay, I'm Councillor Alison Martin. Thank you.
I'm the Reverend David Owen. I'm a Methodist representative.
My name is Akib, and I'm the representative for the Islamic faith.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Tolan, and I'm with ENRE Today.
Imran Arif, National Education Union and Chair of Group C.
Liz Seymour, I'm the Diocesan Deputy Director for the Board of Education for Derby Diocese.
Zoe Higgins, Church of England representative and primary school teacher.
Viv Lawrence, a representative of the Church of England, a former primary school teacher.
I'm Dr. Hardal Singh Dhillon, representing Sikh, Guru Arjan Dev Gurdwara.
Are there any apologies, Jack, please?
Yes, there are. So Judith Willers, Paul Tunde and Eve Sacker have sent their apologies.
Thank you. Declaration of interest? There are none that I'm aware of. We will now turn to the minutes of the last meeting, please. I'll go through the minutes page by page, initially for accuracy. It's the minutes of the meeting for the 26th of June 2024. Page 1, this is for accuracy.
Can something like individual name be reported?
Okay.
So it should be H-A-R-D-I-A-L. H-A-R-D-I-A-L. I would like to say something more about it. Being a Sikh, name Sikh is very
can you raise these matters under any other business, on the matters arising? In the meantime, could Dr. Dillon be given the agenda items for today, please? Thank you. So on page 1, there's an inaccuracy in the spelling of one of the members' name.
Yeah, also the same issue here with my surname. So it should be spelled A-R-I-F.
Okay. There is another inaccuracy, Jack.
Yeah, it's my surname, and it should be A-R-I-F.
Page 2, and this is for accuracy. Page 3, for accuracy again. And finally, page 4. Page 4, accuracy. Okay. Shall we go back to page 1? You had a matter rising.
Could you put your microphone?
Right, sorry, I'm not familiar when it's read. Okay. Just wanted to say, apart from the spelling, I noticed that some of the names are mentioned with titles, like reverend councillors. The others are totally ignored. There should be either one policy, include them, or exclude all in the name of equality. Thank you.
What's the protocol, Jack? Is there a protocol as to whether people are given a title or not? I think there's an expectation that you do give the councillors a designated title so that we are aware of the elected representatives.
Perhaps it's a matter of Jack needing to know the titles that people need to be named by. Because Jack is new in this committee, he won't know who's a reverend or who's a whatever. So perhaps maybe at the end of the committee people could maybe email Jack to let him know what their given title is. But that should be helpful to all of us to know what people's titles are, especially in the context of this committee, I think.
Yes.
Because I have no idea what titles.
Whilst you're speaking, Councillor Ashby, could you introduce yourself, please? Thank you.
Certainly, and firstly, can I give my apologies for being a little late? Traffic at this time of the year, as you all know, is dreadful. I'm Carmel Ashby, the Labour Councillor for Abbey Ward, and been a member of SACRA since last year.
Jack.
Thank you. Yes, so I'm new to the committee. I unfortunately didn't write these minutes, but I'm very happy to first of all treat those as amendments and make sure that those that the minutes are amended to ensure that the names are correctly spelled, that titles are used properly, and if I might liaise with yourself and anyone else who has just to make sure that I get those titles correct, if that's okay, I'll use them from going forward.
Okay, can we agree that your respective titles are sent to Jack in due course? Thank you. Okay, if there are no other matters from page 1, matters on page 2. Matters on page 3. And finally, page 4, any matters arising from those items?
So a matter I want to raise, which runs from page 3 to page 4, and main points are point 9 of 24, and then again 10, 11 and 12. We note that there's, from the last minutes, we agreed that there would be more attention given on Sikhism in the curriculum, which is a positive thing, as well as anti-racism, again, a very positive recommendation. But I think it's more contained within points 10, 11 and 12 that the SACRE did raise a concern. We had some discussion around sort of geopolitical issues, and perhaps that would have been mentioned in point 9, were it not for the fact that point 10, 11 and 12 also address recent concerns of war across the world, especially the Palestine situation and stuff. So for it not to be mentioned on point 9, and in potential, if we don't really implement it in points 10, 11, 12, I don't want that to be subsumed and lost. So I'm just raising that as something that we need to watch going forward, and also into the next session when we look at the agreed syllabus as well. And again, it will be a point I'll raise. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, indeed, going forward, those issues will be taken up and addressed. In addition to the Palestine situation, what would have been discussed was the unrest across Britain during the August month. Yeah, thank you. If there are no further matters from the minutes, can we move on the agenda, please?
May I ask, just please, as a favour, I'm profoundly deaf. So even though we're using microphones, if people could speak clearly and speak up, it would be very helpful for me, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. Okay, can we move to membership, resignation and vacancies? We have had 2 resignations. Firstly, we've received resignations from Raj Bali, who represented the Hindu faith, and we've also had resignation from the position of Vice Chair of SACRE and the Chair of Group A. Firstly, I'd like to pass on my thanks to Raj Bali, who has stepped down from SACRE, as I've just indicated. We'd like to thank him for his membership of this committee. Secondly, turning to the previous Vice Chair, Yves Sacre, who's unable to attend today because of health issues, has stepped down as Vice Chair of SACRE and the Chair of Group A, and a member of the SACRE Development Working Group. I would like to extend thanks personally to both those members on the behalf of the membership of SACRE. To Eve for her work in her additional roles on SACRE over many years. I note that Eve also sent a letter of resignation from those respective positions, and she gave clear reasons as to why she felt that she needed to step down. And the reasons that she had given, one of the reasons referred to her perception of the where the committee is at in terms of its efficacy, and the need to strengthen the work of the committee. The points that she has raised in terms of the development of the committee clearly will be taken on board as we set out to improve our work, and certainly will be considered as we look at the forthcoming or the implementation of the new syllabus and beyond. So once again, thank you to those members for their significant contribution to the committee. If I can just pause a little. Did we mention apologies, Jack? I don't think we did. Okay, right. Eve, having stood down as the Vice Chair of this committee and also as the chair of Group A. For those respective positions, there is a there's rotation amongst the chairs of SACRE respective groups. We are required to nominate and elect from the respective groups somebody to be the vice chair. Well, certainly the vice chair of, the vice chair of, the chair of group, getting my chairs and positioning confused. We need to elect a chair for Group A, and the chair of Group A automatically becomes the vice chair of SACRE. Is that procedure correct, Jack? So we need to, from Group A, elect a chair to replace Eve, and the person will become the chair, the vice chair of SACRE.
Can you remind us who the members of Group A are?
3, and it would just be amongst Group A to decide that.
It's for Group A to decide from who they wish to be the chair they wish to nominate. Go on. Can you assist Jack in any way?
It would help. It can just be a spokesperson for today's meeting, if that, just to fill the role of feeding back the group's consideration. It would just be amongst this. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Is the group happy for this? Thank you.
Yeah. Just say who you are, please.
Akibai, as representative of Islamic faith, and will happily take on the role. Yeah.
Thank you. Also, we need to consider the nomination of members to a number of vacant positions. Perhaps you could indicate those positions, if that's all right, Jack.
Yes, yes, of course. Thank you. So at the moment we have vacant positions of the Baha'i faith, the Buddhist faith, the Hindu faith, the Salvation Army, the Serbian Orthodox Church, United Reformed Church, and the ASCL Union. I think the proposal or the question is that could please members reach out through their networks to see if you know anyone that may be interested in joining the SACRE. I, of course, email these faith groups as best I can, but it's best to have an approach where both myself, I am emailing, but also for SACRE members to be passing this on as well. Thank you.
A new United... Sorry.
It's okay.
A new United Reformed Church minister has recently been appointed. I don't know who he is, I've just heard that. And so I should imagine it would be appropriate to approach him or her. I don't know who it is, but I do know the appointment after a long interregnum has finally been made, and so that'll open a door, I'm sure.
Thank you. Dr. Dillon?
I was just going to suggest that people who have stepped down, it might be a good idea to approach those individuals that they could perhaps, from within their community, could suggest somebody's name more appropriately rather than be proposing someone.
Yes, that's very helpful, but we're still urging as many of you as possible to try and reach out and see whether there are people out there who'd be interested in being part of this committee. I think just to get a cold, detached email from how Jack is wonderful, but to get a detached email sent to you asking you to be part of this, perhaps it's not the same as perhaps the preparatory work of approaching somebody, talking to them about what SACRE does and encourage them to consider joining the committee would be very helpful. Thank you. Move on to the next item, which is the annual report from SACRE. The annual report goes to the Department for Education. You have all received a copy of the annual report. What was missing from it was the foreword from the chair. I've since written a foreword, which I hope has been circulated. So with respect to both the report and the foreword, are there any comments, suggestions or observations, please?
Yes. One of them's an inaccuracy on page 20. Again, my surname is misspelled. It should be A-R-I-F. Also, at the bottom where it says in attendance, my name needs to also be there, as I came in as an observer on the 1st of February.
Thank you for that. Any other comments, feedback, observations?
Just to share that in previous years it's been an annual report that's been prepared for Derby and Derbyshire. So this is the first time one's been prepared by RE today for us to make sure that we meet our statutory requirement, which is the deadline of the 31st of December. So this report is slightly different to previous reports because it's just from a Derby perspective as opposed from a Derby and Derbyshire perspective. But moving forward, it's quite evident that there's some areas that we need to work on in terms of feedback from schools and also consultation with school governors. So we'll be looking to amend that moving forward. So I think there's notable absence of information there at this stage, but moving forward that will be rectified. So thank you.
Thank you, Shahina. I think it's positive that we are producing our own thoughts and our own performance. And as Shahina's just said, there are gaps which hopefully we will attend to in due course. Thank you. If there are no further comments, we'll move on to the next item. Do you all agree with both parts of the document? A, the full report, and B, the chair's foreword. So we're in agreement. Thank you. Yeah.
With thanks to RE today for preparing that on our behalf. So yes, thank you.
Of course, thanks to RE today for their contribution.
Are we talking about the syllabus?
No, we're talking about. Do you still not have all the documents?
No, I even got very patchy agenda here.
Okay, no, we're talking about the annual report, which was sent out to everyone.
Yeah.
And also my foreword that was subsequently sent out to members.
I get confused because I've got something very different here.
Okay.
And it's not a complete.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to invite Ian to say something about, Ian Nicholson, about National SACRE, please, if you would, Ian.
Yeah, thank you very much. This was also sent out, excuse me, my cold's getting worse now, with details about national developments over the past 4 months in RE. The first one that's there, and to update you even further, as I've had meetings this morning again regarding the curriculum review that Becky Francis is undertaking in terms of RE, that the government has asked for a complete review of the curriculum to ensure its accessibility to all students in line with the Equalities Act, but also to ensure that children have the right tools for the future. NATRE, the National Association of Teachers of RE, have provided a response to Becky Francis, who is leading the review on behalf of the DFE, and it is interesting news for RE that 2 members of the review panel are actually RE specialists, which out of a field of 10 I think is really quite good for RE. We are due to have in spring an update from the government on its direction for a new curriculum. We do know that once the curriculum review is finalised, academised schools will need to teach the national curriculum, and there are discussions ongoing about what that will mean for RE. Because under the funding agreement for academies, academies are allowed to choose their own degree syllabus. They do not have to use their locally agreed syllabus. So at the moment, RE is in the discussions, and Becky Francis has been having meetings with people from the RE world, so to speak, about the place of RE in the curriculum going forward. So there has been put forward by the RE Council the National Content Standard and the National Statement of Entitlement for RE, and that has been looked at as part of, or is being looked at as part of the review. Also, any interested parties in terms of the curriculum review for RE were also invited by the DFE to put forward responses, and there will be going forward another round of requests for information from other organisations about the status and development of RE going forward. But it's interesting to note that actually GCSE RE is as popular as ever, when in fact history and geography have declined, which is interesting given the EBAC put history and geography at the forefront. One thing that's been aligned with this and has been discussion with the DFE around these areas is actually 51% of teachers of RE are non-specialists across primary and secondary. So we do know that the reintroduction of the bursary for teacher training for RE has increased the numbers in this academic year. So we will look to see if that will continue next year. But there is a drive to train more RE teachers. And in the recent NATRE primary survey, we have noticed an increase in primary coordinators who have at least an A level or above in religious education, which is a vast improvement on the survey from 2 years ago. And A-level RE as well is continuing to hold its own in England, but not in Wales. There's been a move to an RVE curriculum, so we don't know about the impact on there as well. We are still awaiting workforce data, but what we do know is that 1/6 of children in Year 11 are receiving no RE in schools. And one of the elements of the review that Becky Francis is undertaking for Bridget Phillipson is to look at the fact the statutory requirement is for RE to be taught to every child from the age of 4, if it's a reception class, up to the age of 18, if they're in a sixth form that was designated a school sixth form prior to 1992, is the fact that some schools are still not fulfilling their legal requirements. So the idea is that the curriculum review may look at this one and say that actually children should be, but there is a move to say that actually the right of withdrawal should only be on a parental or carer request, not on a school request. So there is a big issue at the moment with children who've been withdrawn from RE for support for other lessons, which actually goes against the Education Act. So I know that there has been a move to close the circle, so to speak, in terms of schools not fulfilling their requirement for every child to have RE. And this is based on the Deep and Meaningful report from Richard Quay in April. It came out on the 17th of April this year, and on the recent SIAMS annual update that came out a few months ago, both of which I've read. So there is this move to look at RE within the curriculum, and as I say, that members of the review are asking for interested parties to discuss this in terms of a curriculum going forward. And one of the things that's come out of the research review, which is interesting to schools and is being really picked on by SLT at the moment, is that when there's been an analysis of children who've studied GCSE RE, actually it's improved attainment in their other subjects. So there's a notable improvement, especially around Progress 8 scores for children in Year 11 who have studied a GCSE in religious studies. So that's been put out there as well to schools and is becoming quite interesting for SLT to look at the place of RE there as well. The OU have just put out some materials for teachers on their religion and worldviews, religion, belief and worldviews hub. So there's material out there now for teachers who may not be a specialist in a certain area within religious education to provide support and guidance for them as well. And I know we'll talk about those ones going forward in those areas as well. And St Andrews University are very keen to develop children's ability to debate and discuss. And they've put forward for all schools, maintained schools, academised schools, the Ethics Cup. And rather than allowing children in schools where public speaking is really, really key, is very much forward, that pupils are only given the subject on the day, so it's about their ability to do that one. So we're trying to recognise children's ability to handle ethical discussions and debates, and that's open to all schools as well. So there are national developments going forward in RE that, as part of NATRE, and RE today work very closely with NATRE, we're looking at to support those going forward, welcoming, as I say, the continued uptake of GCSE RE. And one of the things that the review will do, will also, as asked, is the GCSE RE specification too full of content? And are we allowing breadth rather than depth? So there will be major developments. We are expecting the review to begin putting findings out in the next 3 months. So we'll be able to keep members of the SACRE and the local authority updated on those as they go along. Thank you.
Okay, Ian, thank you very much for that update. Yes, there's very much a mixed bag there. I do know Professor Becky Francis. I've worked with her in the past. Just as an observation before I bring in other members, given that the Teaching of RE is steeped within the 1944 Education Act and subsequent acts, amendments, I'm surprised that it is not being taught across all our schools. And I just wondered, what are the inspectorate doing? The inspectorate that go into schools and inspect the curriculum and what children are receiving and the nature and the efficacy of what they're receiving. What is happening there in terms of the inspectorate ensuring that this statutory requirement is actually enforced?
Yeah, one of the things we've noticed when speaking to schools who've had specifically deep dives in RE is they've been asked, rather than, and it used to be a lot around teaching the realities, intent, implementation, impact. You know, what is your aim of RE? How are you implementing it? Where's the impact? Schools are now being asked, well, if you're not having RE in certain areas by inspectors, therefore there can be no impact, and it can lead to discussions with senior leaders in schools about why you're not fulfilling your statutory responsibilities. And one thing that's been made very clear is that, and I know now the EFA, the Education Funding Agency, has now been moved into the DFE, but one of the elements of your EFA agreement from the Academy is that you would continue to teach RE to every pupil in your school for every year. So schools are being made aware that actually part of their funding agreement is that children will receive RE. And so actually that has been brought up with academies, that you are actually in, you know, your funding agreement says you will be teaching RE, why are you not doing it? And one of the things that came out of the Ofsted report in 2024 has been an increase in schools looking at RE, because, for example, and I will use the section from the secondary area and the Key Stage 5 area, is saying where RE is subsumed into other subjects such as PSHE, RSE and citizenship and tutor time, the comment there is that is poor RE, because children are not being given the opportunity to use, and the Christian Council use this phrase, the curriculum as the progression model. So they're not enabled then to recall and build on their substantive knowledge. So that is being mentioned a lot at the moment in the light of Deep and Meaningful. And I know a lot of SLT colleagues have spoken and brought people into schools to work with them and say, right, we need to ensure that it is a locally agreed syllabus, but also it's in every year group and we are following the law. So Deep and Meaningful's had the bigger impact. We do know as well, and we're expecting in March time, some more guidance on the new Ofsted framework. However, that's going to, we understand, look at the quality of education comment and around the ability of all children to access the curriculum. So it is very much now at the forefront of what people are thinking. And I do think the recent science report and the recent Ofsted Deep and Meaningful has really focused people's thinking in RE.
Okay. Can you just remind us what SLT means, please?
Yeah, so SLT are the school's senior leadership team. So it's usually the head, deputy head and assistant heads.
Any feedback?
I'd just like to make an observation, having taught for over 20 years. There are a number of, I don't think it's altogether a bad thing that it's not taught in year 11 and 12 and 13, because A, if you don't have a specialist who is keen, B, the students are busy, GCSEs have put them under the cosh, and you've got to impose on them another non-examined, compulsory subject. It tends to be very poor RE. And I would rather have no RE than poor RE. My solution when I was still a practicing teacher was to get the SLT to accept that the whole school did the short course at GCSE level. And also, I'm sad to confess, I'm also an ex-inspector. But I say that in jest, obviously. But I was quite satisfied as an inspector that if there was a high profile of RE examined as a short course at GCSE across the whole cohort, albeit if they took it at the end of year 10, that raised the profile of RE and the popularity. It was interesting, the vast numbers that actually opted A, for a full course, and B, to actually do it at A level, at least in the old days before the syllabus changed in 2016, at least to AS level, including mathematicians, physicists, and all that sort of thing. So it's just as a point of interest. As a practical issue, I would rather have excellence and less than fulfill the letter of the law and have religion and religious studies really fall into not a good place at all.
Can I just remind the meeting that it's against the law not to have RE? Thanks.
Just comes to my mind is that sometime in this chamber we have talked about in the past of a teaching of RE, and sometimes people have commented either there is a teacher or somebody who is not doing anything takes the RE class. I would wholeheartedly agree with you, sir, what you said. Can I ask if we have any sort of figures up and down the country that the teachers who deliver these services in the schools, whether they are from the diverse background? So sometimes one teacher cannot, with due respect, have all the diverse knowledge of different religions, and therefore we can't blame the students if the teacher themselves are patchy, and the student will never know.
Okay, can you make your response brief, because we've got to get on to the conference. And then
there is some data which I'll share with the chair of the SACRE that she sent round about the makeup of the RE teaching profession in terms of ethnicity and religious background. So we do have that information at NATRE, so we can make sure you've got that. I don't have it to hand, I'm afraid, at the moment, but there is some information there, yeah.
Thank you. Cheryl, please.
It's actually nice to hear that.
Oh, I'm pressing the picture, sorry. It's actually nice to hear what people are actually saying about the teaching of RE. But one of the biggest things, I'm really happy to hear that academies are going to be held to some account about the teaching, because as a teacher in an academy school, I have raised many, many times about the material that has been brought in to teach the subject. When we came away from the national curriculum on the subject, it was too repetitive. I would be, for example, teaching year 5, and then I would possibly go into year 6, and I'd repeated what I'd just said in year 5, and I thought to myself, was I going mad? Because I thought, I've just said that. Why are they repeating the same aspect of a particular faith, shall I say, like Sikhism and whatever, that, you know, it isn't fair on the children, because they get bored. They'll say to you, I was told that in year 5 or whatever year they were in. So they like to have something of another interest. What also bothers me is that there isn't always inclusion in the classroom for the religions. because I have had many, many children that have been Jehovah's Witnesses, and they have been excluded from the religion on, you know, if you said, I am a Sikh, I am a Christian, you have to include that child to get them to come and talk about their faith and what that faith means to them. It's not about me preaching what their faith is, it's about them telling what the faith is to them for other people to accept them. And if that religion's being excluded, where is the value to them and the equality for that? That bothers me quite a bit.
Thank you. Okay. Final brief point, please, because we've got to move on to the conference now. Thank you.
It was just in response to Dr. Hardy, is it Hardy? Yeah. And then Ian's response as well of having access to data on the diversity of RE professionals. You know, you'll have access to the quantitative data, but if you were looking for more qualitative data, there's research done by Cardiff University on the matter, and they've actually tracked a lot of Muslim teachers from about 10 years ago who actually found it quite difficult to be an RE teacher because they were sort of under review by SLT, and sort of a question mark over their head of where their loyalty stands and what they might be doing in the classroom and whether they were also radicalising under the Prevent initiative and things like that. So, yeah, there's a legacy there we need to be aware of.
Very much for the feedback. We've certainly got a lot of discussion. Okay, just before we move on and close this part of our meeting, something I wanted to raise, perhaps I should have raised it under membership and resignation. I do think at some point we need to review the constitution of this group, SECRA, particularly in relation to representation. I looked at the makeup of the membership, and those in the city that are of the Catholic faith, which is one of the biggest faith group in the city, with several primary school, one large secondary school, is only entitled to one representative here. Now, I don't want to get into some theocracy battle and denominational battle here, but, you know, that really doesn't make sense, particularly if you look at what the recent census material figures are saying. We really do need to look at the makeup of this body, this committee. Okay. Thank you. Okay, the date of the next meeting, SACRA meeting, is listed here, Thursday the 20th of March, 2025. Okay, thank you. We will now move on to the second half of the meeting, and that is to consider, deliberate the agreed syllabus. We're now in the syllabus conference meeting. We've raised a raft of very important issues about RE teaching, the lack of it, the quality of it. And this is a prime moment, I think, in selecting the appropriate curriculum going forward for us, hopefully, in the city of Derby, to tackle those issues in our schools. Okay, what we're required to do, for those who are joining us on YouTube, we've now moved to the second half of the meeting. What we're required to do for the second half of the meeting is to elect a chair to take us through that meeting. Jack, do you want to say something, please, about this?
Thank you. This is a formally separate body. The proposal is for continuity to continue the chairing as it is. So Group A elected their chair, the respective chairs continue in their role, and Councillor Wright stays in her position as the chair of the full conference. We're really just asking that the conference is satisfied with that approach.
Are people happy with that proposal going forward? Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, let's proceed. Okay, I'll ask whether there are any declaration. We're now in a separate meeting, so I'll ask again whether there are any declaration of interest. No. So we turn to the main item of this agenda, of this meeting, and that is the new religious education syllabus for the City of Derby. There is a process to how we're going to conduct ourselves. Firstly, we'll ask Shahina and Ian to present the syllabus and to guide the committee through the papers which have been produced, which you've all been sent two rather dense documents, and I hope you've distilled them and understood them, and you'll be examined on them. After the presentation, the conference will adjourn for groups to deliberate on the options put forward. Groups are asked to note when you adjourn during your discussion, to note your questions and comments from your deliberations to feed back to the full conference. So you'll be broken up into your, well, you're already broken up into your respective groups. You'll be asked to go away and actually discuss after you've heard the presentation from Shahina and Ian. Once the group have deliberated, we will reconvene as a full conference, and I will invite each group to put their points over to the wider group. Once your questions, your observations, once they have been dealt with, I will invite groups to feed back their comments on the syllabus proposals. And if need be, and I hope we don't have to, but we may need to, we may, in light of what you've fed back, any contestation, we may need to adjourn again so that we can hopefully come to agreements, appropriate agreements. And finally, the committee will vote, so there's voting involved here, you will vote on the respective matters and issues that are raised by each group. Each group has one vote. At the completion of the voting, there will be 4 votes representing each committee, and I just hope today we'll in principle at least agree on a syllabus that will be then taken away and refined and adapted for the needs of the city of Derby. After the vote, the conference may discuss the next stage, which will be guided by both Ian and Shahina as to where we go from here. So can I turn to Shahina and Ian to take us through the beginning of the process for agreeing a syllabus for the future? Thank you.
Thank you. So in light of the need for our discussion today, you'll be aware that my involvement is to support schools. And so this is a statutory process, and so it needs to take place every 3 years. That's correct, isn't it, Ian? Yeah, 5 years, yeah, not 3. So every 5 years. So we've had to consult schools, and the way in which we did that was a questionnaire was prepared. It was shared with yourselves first before it was distributed to schools, as opposed to just seeking the feedback from our LA maintained schools. That information was shared with all Derby City schools. And so they all had the opportunity to feed into the feedback process, to 1, share with us what their current content was, and to 2, share with us what they felt they needed more of. And so that process was undertaken with your feedback. There were some amendments to the questionnaire. I think that's important to share with you. So having shared with SACRE, those of you that did feedback, thank you for that. Amendments were made to that content. It was shared by the school circular, and and then we number crunched, we looked at the information. Ian's team has been able to pull together some feedback based on that. But it's well worth noting that unfortunately, there wasn't as much of a response as I would have liked from our Derby schools. So moving forward, it's about how we're going to strengthen that partnership with our Derby schools to gain more kind of feedback from them, and hopefully that will happen through a networking process, but we'll discuss that as we move forward through today's discussion. As you know from the previous meeting, RE Today have been commissioned to support this process. In previous years, we worked in collaboration with Derbyshire, as well as Derby. Derbyshire have already decided upon their agreed syllabus. They've facilitated their agreed syllabus conference. They have a syllabus in place now. They too are working with RE Today, and Ian will be able to talk you through that a bit more. But I do think it's important to share that in the past we have had an agreed syllabus conference together, and we've agreed a syllabus together, but they've already undertaken that process. So we're having our own process, and if things marry, then potentially we'll look at how that partnership will continue moving forward. But if not, it's about our syllabus meeting the needs of our community, our children, and what our joint vision is around that. So Ian, I'll hand over to you in terms of the feedback of the questionnaire. Is that okay?
Yeah. So you will have received having Derby Thank you, She. Current Having Derby came in was 2020, which those of us who were in schools will well know what we were doing in 2020, which was trying to teach online. And for colleagues in primary schools, and I was in secondary school, but actually trained as a primary school teacher many years ago, we were doing lessons online. So the idea is that what was adopted by Derby and Derbyshire was what in RE today we will call our model syllabus A. That was adopted for schools across Derby City Council area for maintained schools. And the first question we asked was, were the schools satisfied, or were they, the question was, did they find it useful? So rather than being satisfied, was it useful for them? And 92.9% have said it was either very useful, which was 64.3%, or somewhat useful, which was 28.6%. So the idea is there is actually some element there within the schools we asked as to their support for syllabus A, because reality was when we're talking to them, they've really only had 3 years of using the syllabus, because 2020, 21, 22 was a lot of catch-up work for post-COVID, a lot around literacy and numeracy, and foundation subjects other than maths and English and science really were not prioritised by many schools. And I was actually in a school there and trying to teach GCSE RE online, and A-level RE online was very interesting at the time. I remember it well, especially when they didn't turn their cameras on for me. So we have found from schools that they have found the current syllabus, which is referred to in your pack of materials as option A+, something there that is interesting as well. We have a breakdown in terms of the religions taught by schools and in which key stage, and this reflects the ONS data around the religious makeup of Derby and the children being taught in Derby schools. So, for example, we have Buddhism, Christianity, and Christianity being required by law to be taught in all year groups. We also have Hindu Dharma, Islam, Sikhi, and some schools also replied about teaching Judaism. And apologies for me having left that out, and I did apologise for that one. I include there, and also the non-religious worldviews as well being taught there. And we asked for schools to break it down in terms of each of the key stages, or EYFS, within their settings as well. So we have the data that has reflected some of our thinking and the discussions that Shaheen and I have had around developing an A+ for Derby. And as Shaheen said, I've been working with Derbyshire because, as you may tell, and Shaheen knows this by my accent, I am a local boy who was born all of 14 miles up the road and lived for 19 years of my life in Matlock, so I am a local lad. My mum still has a part of the baseball ground in her lawn that she bought when the baseball ground... She didn't manage to buy the middle of it, that was too expensive. She didn't get the centre point, but she has got a metre square of the baseball ground in her lawn still at the moment. So we asked schools to think about that one. We also got from them a view, and this is part of the role of the SACRE, and this is when we mentioned this, to look at your role of monitoring provision of RE, about how much time had been given, because actually in all agreed syllabuses we are not allowed, the agreed syllabus committee is not allowed to specify an exact amount of time that needs to be taught. They recommend that to fulfill the aims, objectives and outcomes of an agreed syllabus, a certain amount of time should be given, which usually equates to 5% curriculum time. So we have asked schools, and you have there in response to the question, you know, an hour a week, 50 minutes a week, 1 hour a week. So we do have information around how much is given, 7% curriculum time, so slightly more than the 5%. The only ever recommendation for RE being 5% was the Deering report in 1994. So we've not had anything for, and that's the year I started teaching, so I remember it well, but we've not had anything for 30 years. But an agreed syllabus is allowed to recommend time, but cannot give an amount of time there as well. We've also asked schools to talk about what's on their school website, because the law changed in October of this year that schools must publish the right of withdrawal procedures for the school on their school website. So that came through in October of this year, that the right of withdrawal is still there, and it is mentioned in the agreed syllabus, but actually saying those as well. The idea of schools talking about the curriculum map for RE, only one school is making the link to the agreed syllabus. So even though they're saying it's useful, and that's that 92.1%, it's not really mentioned on their school website, which actually is a requirement for them to do so. So some schools put the whole agreed syllabus on the school website. Some put on a précis of it. So the idea is that the schools must publish the basis, which for, and you mentioned earlier, national curriculum subjects is fine. You put a link onto the DFE website. You can't do that for RE. So that was interesting. One thing, we also asked schools to inform us of what they would like in terms of training and development going forward. And this does go very much to the area of teachers with other specialisms teaching RE, which we've mentioned earlier. And one of the areas is actually a lot of it is around pedagogy, that schools want some information around pedagogy. And this has come forward, and the agreed syllabus we're looking at does speak about that and about the pedagogical underpinning of the curriculum in terms of ways of knowing and in terms of substantive knowledge and personal knowledge. And we also asked schools how RE was managed, and there was lots of conversation there around having a single point of an RE lead, whether it be a head of department in a high school or the head of humanities in one school in particular, but also primary RE coordinators being mentioned as well. So they did talk about this, but also experienced subject leaders, where's an area of a weakness, it being moved to a member of the senior management team. We also asked any other comments, and these are included, and some of the comments which I'll go through that you've read is it should include more CIKI, which we have addressed going forward in some of the, we'll talk about those in a moment. Support materials and texts, which very much goes along with the theological way of knowing and disciplinary knowledge of how we use texts with children. And Shaheen and I were talking earlier, but my background is in Dharmic religions and Islam, and how, I've just done some work on how we use the Quran and certain surahs to explore with young children how we would deepen understanding, but also using, for example, the Guru Granth Sahib and how we can use statements from the Mool Mantar with children in year 1, year 2 to explore and explain that. That's one thing they've asked for from the agreed syllabus. But they've also asked for just continued support, subject leaders meeting and sharing good practice, and we've talked about that as well. Also linked with the community. And in fact, speaking earlier, one of my colleagues, Debbie Yeomans, is your RE hub lead for the area, and she does a lot of work with the community, so Shaheen and I spoke about that one. And also about resourcing it, but actually ensuring that when we do have a new agreed syllabus, one teacher mentioned that there is training would be helpful and support with making the curriculum more engaging. So the idea is to adopt an agreed syllabus to do that one. So we've put forward syllabus A plus that you've got a copy of. That's the copy of my agreed syllabus, because I was chair of Trafford Sacre for, actually now I realise it was 11 years. So that was so that's syllabus A plus. You also have the one from Bury, which is syllabus B, because I'm also RE advisor for Bury Local Authority as well.
Thank you, Ian. So in terms of the feedback Ian's just gone through with you, that's the feedback that we received from schools. As a consequence, the syllabus is for schools, so we've tried to integrate what they've given us in terms of the feedback in the syllabuses we've provided you with. However, we're very minded by the fact that Derby is very different to any other place, and we want to make sure this syllabus meets the needs of our children in our schools. And so just to address some of the issues that Ian has raised and some of the feedback we've received, and I hope that's okay.
Yes, that's
Councillor.
fine. Yes, that's fine.
So Sikhism was raised, so there's a module within the new syllabus. It's syllabus A plus that you've been provided with, and we've got some feedback that we can go through in terms of the comments you've provided, and we've had a pre-meeting to discuss how we can address those. And also this idea of the fact that there have been situations that have been arising not just in the community of Derby but beyond in terms of anti-racism, and so we thought it was really, really important for us to address that as well, and so that has been included as well. However, we also felt to make sure this agreed syllabus conference was purposeful that we presented 2 syllabuses to you so we could discuss those in that way. 2 representatives from Sacre have fed back to us in terms of their feedback. Eve isn't here. This is Eve, isn't it? Yeah. Eve's not here, but she did send some feedback through to us, and I don't know if colleagues have had that information,
they
Jack.
But perhaps you can give us some
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of the feedback that she has provided, I don't know if colleagues have a copy of that in front of them, but she talks about 3.12, the unit, and she talks about this idea of religion and conflict. Ian and I discussed the feedback that she provided, and it's about the age appropriateness of the suggestion around that. And we felt that was the same thing for Unit 2.9 as well. So whilst we understand what's being presented and the feedback given. It's just about whether our children would understand that material within that unit for their age group. I don't know if you want to add anything to that. And also, in terms of language, I just wanted to mention as well, this idea of moving, no, that was on a different one, wasn't it? No, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Can I just clarify, both of you, we are talking about your reference to those sections referred to A+. Yeah,
sorry,
just
I did
in
in fact,
case,
yeah,
because I
sorry,
just looked
yeah.
across at Dr.
Sorry,
Dillon
I
and
apologise.
he did look as if, hope you didn't mind me singling out, but he did look as if, yeah. So does that help you? Does that clarify for you? Yeah, where we're at. Yeah, thank you.
Great. And in terms of reference to the other comments that teachers have made, we're going to create a network opportunity for teachers to come together, and that's going to be facilitated by RE today with specialists to support understanding around teaching, because there is recognition that there are non-specialists potentially delivering materials and we need to support them with that. So that will be included in the RE Today support package that's going to be facilitated. In terms of specialisms, there will be an opportunity for teachers to ask for the support they want in particular areas, and we're going to make sure that's included as separate CPD opportunities. We think that it's important too. But in terms of feedback around the C-Key section, we have had a very detailed discussion about how we can make sure that those areas are addressed and covered. One area that cannot be really addressed is in terms of the language around the endorsement of British values, and that's because that language is taken from DFE statutory guidance, and so unfortunately we can't move away from that. Whilst we don't disagree with what you're saying, it's about that consistent language that's used across the DFE documentation, which means that this is referring to Dr. Hardiel's information that he sent through in regards to the introduction of Part 3.7 in terms of the usage of the language of an endorsement of British values. So that aspect cannot be changed because of statutory guidance.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Did you want me to? Yeah, and I think Imran wants to come in a little while, but I just wanted to comment on Dr. Hardiel about British values and why you think that as a heading, as a section ought to be taken out. And I just wanted to say that the teaching of RE is predicated on the 1944 Education Act for English schools, British schools. Therefore, what underpins the teaching of RE, even though we have different religious groups, etc., is about Britain and religion in Britain. So just to add to the point that's been made, that this is something that is stipulated by the Department for Education.
However, yes, by all means, yeah.
I've been teaching for 30 years in Derby College, biology, and when these ideas of British values came around, especially around this time of the year when November time came and we celebrating our World War I, World War II, without naming certain communities' children had total disregard for that. And they will say, the Britain is saying one thing in schools and another thing as a worldwide policy. You can see the current situation in the Middle East, where we're seeing conflict between Palestinians and the Jews, and you can see the British position is totally silent, and supporting the USA, totally silent. And yet, we are trying to hold, we are the one who hold freedom in the world. People speak and so on. This isn't their experience. And therefore, I do remember that few years ago, on these meetings, when we were discussing, when these very freshly came as a British value to be taught to the students, we were sticking up and down in classrooms, these posters, please respect them. The idea came to this committee as well, and we decided that these would be more if they were actually referred as universal values, because they are universal human values that every culture, every country should respect. So there's nothing British about them. But having said that, if they are British, then British ought to practice them, not one thing in here and another thing in there. One thing teaching to the children and then behaving completely differently at the world front.
Thank you, Dr. Dillon. It's not always easy to disaggregate politics from religion. Okay.
Just a thought. From my accent, you'll probably guess that I come from South Africa originally. And sometimes laws need to be changed. Yeah. And I'd like to suggest, in support of you, Dr. Dillon, that, and not just support of you, but we keep on quoting the 1944 Education Act. 1944 and 2024-25 are two completely different periods. Is there a place for SACRE to suggest that we would like the wording of certain legislation to come under revision? Because at the moment, I'm a little bit nervous if we resort to, oh, but it's the law, and it's against the law. Well, maybe that law needs to be changed.
Good idea, but I don't know whether we have the power to do.
You can make the suggestion.
Yeah. So I'm wanting to comment on sort of Eve's suggestions, specifically around 3.12 and 2.9. And like, I'm going to put it as though, well, in my role as an advocate for teachers, you know, we're often caught in a very difficult situation where we have to teach a complex world to prepare young people for the world, but we also need to try and teach young people to create a better world, you know? And so if we are going to reach back in history to look for times when certain things were done, for example, when certain religions promoted racism or were involved in racism or in slavery and things like that, we should actually look more for the positive times. So, you know, in terms of Islam's relations with Judaism, it's more recent in history when Morocco, Turkey, and other Muslim countries, you know, gave refugee and citizenship status, you know, when they were expelled from Europe, especially Spain, you know, so the Sephardic Jews and the Mizrahi Jews, you know, and so I think some of Eve's comments actually homogenize religions, so really I'm looking to try and shift that balance more towards harmonious and multicultural societies that have existed and that we should try to create. And the same comments for anti-racism as well.
Thank you very much for that. These are the sort of things you need to debate in your groups. Yeah. So really, I'd appreciate if you just hold on to your thoughts, observations, and leave those for the group discussion. Okay.
Just in terms of the references made around the CECI unit, I think it's really important for us to address that actually most of the suggestions that have been made can be adapted. So in terms of the imagery that you've referred to, we've got colleagues here that actually you can help select that, so that isn't an issue. In terms of the stories, you mentioned something around Key Stage 3 and the Sikh stories around the lives of gurus. If you could help support in terms of the selection process, that can be accommodated as well. I don't know, I'm just kind of reeling off the information Ian and I discussed today. We were talking about this idea of music that can be removed, because that's a valid point. If that's your community's representation and opinion about that, that can be removed. This is our syllabus, and so even though this has been presented in that way, we can very much make this as of a bespoke nature, so it delivers the information that each each committee agrees with, and that's what we really want you to take away. In terms of the language, like the DFE language, we can't do much about that because that's in the Ofsted framework, that's in the DFE guidance. We can't do anything like that in terms of their usage of language, but content, we can very much shape that to meet the needs of what we need. And so we've got somebody here that can support that in terms of RE today in the far corner, who's also a representative. And so, yeah, Ian, do you want to kind of add to that?
Yeah, so in response to the feedback, and Shahina mentioned, one of the things, the syllabus A+ you have, we are proposing that we include a CECA unit in Key Stage 1 and a CECA unit in Key Stage 2, given the religious nature of Derby and the religious population. So we have, in Key Stage 1, the question would be who is the Sikh and how do they live? So we would look at things like the use of the Guru Granth Sahib, the importance of the Gurdwara as the doorway to the Guru, how the Guru Granth Sahib is used at night, the idea of the divan, how it's used within the home, but also how the lived experience of Sikh children's there. So we have put elements in there as well. And one of the things we can also do in response to that is that at Key Stage 1 in this syllabus, we talked about Christianity and Abrahamic religions. We could also include a Dharmic religion.
Okay, so it's worth saying then, we're here for you to come and talk to if you need to.
Okay. Right. we as a committee is in a position to agree with the syllabus in principle. Okay, so we'll go with the feedback first from the different groups. So Group A, please, could you give a feedback on your deliberations?
Had quite an extensive conversation about both syllabuses. From our perspective, we don't really mind which syllabus everybody goes for, but there are a few things that we'd like to present to everybody just for people to deliberate over. With regards to Sikhism, we feel that nothing new has been added compared to the last syllabus that we've had. There's no significant differences, there's no references, no stories, nothing new at all. So that's something that Dr. Singh feels very strongly about. I think it's something that we all need to consider. We also talked about, with regards to Syllabus A, there's been references to Remembrance Day, which is brilliant. However, something that's not been addressed is our colonial past as well. I think if we're going to acknowledge Remembrance Day, as we should, and we should be proud of our British heritage and our values, we need to consider the impact that colonialism has had, especially from the Indian subcontinent. The fact that many people from the Indian subcontinent also fought within these wars, and unfortunately, they've not been acknowledged. The whole purpose of Remembrance Day is that we remember everybody that has fallen, whether it be casualties, whether it's soldiers, and unfortunately, people from the Indian subcontinent do not get that acknowledgement, and that's why within schools, Muslims, Sikhs, Hindu students especially, they don't feel comfortable around this time. So that is something to be noted. Another thing that I feel very passionate about is, unfortunately, one thing that I've seen within both curriculums is the exclusivity and the restrictions placed on Islam with regards to fundamentalism and extremism. It feels almost as if the only religion that has mentioned extremism or fundamentalism is whenever Islam is mentioned. Which I think, if we're talking about Islamophobia within the modern day, I think something like this, it doesn't do many things to help. There's references throughout, on page 89 it mentions violent fundamentalist groups. I think instead of mentioning comments to do with fundamentalism, why can't we talk about the impact that Islam has had throughout science, history? You know, National Geographic did a lot of research recently about Muslim inventions, something that would be, you know, add a lot of diversity within our curriculum, and that could benefit people far more. There's been references to jihad. Unfortunately, the definition given regarding jihad isn't what we feel as Muslims is representative. Jihad comes from the root of juhad, which means to struggle or to strive, rather than mentioning stuff about holy war. So I feel that is quite a prejudiced comment to be made. It also mentions the word mainstream Islamic rejection. Islam totally rejects the notion of terrorism as well. So if syllabuses are to mention anything to do with jihad, there should be a categorical and clear statement being made that Islam condemns all forms of terrorism, a clear cut, so nothing is lost in translation, so to speak. I think that's everything. Do you guys want to add anything? Inclusiveness. Yeah, we were going to mention that. Part of Remembrance Day, we should have something about inclusion as well, to celebrate our differences and to really enrich our differences that we have with one another. And again, just to reiterate, something to do with the contribution of the Commonwealth countries as well, I think is very, very important.
Thank you. We really appreciated the additional CKey units. What we wondered was how they were going to be integrated. So not kind of like, you've got the, I can't remember what page it's on, where you've got the cross-reference of what units should be studied. So like in Key Stage 1, it's Christianity, Muslim, or Jewish. Is it then going to be or Sikhi? How is it going to be integrated in so that people, teachers, when they approach it, are able to use those units and not kind of like marginalise them? And they're integrated, they're not seen as additional. I think it's really important. I don't know if something's going to go or how it's going to be integrated so that, you know, teachers are directed to use those. Yeah.
So one of the things we did discuss is that to put forward to the Degree Syllabus Conference consideration is that at Key Stage 1, we'd say Christianity, Islam or Judaism and a Dharmic faith. So the idea was schools would then choose a Dharmic faith that represented the community in which the school found itself. So a lot around making it very local to the school. So for example, we've put forward, as I say, the 2 Sikhi units. So if a school has a large population of Sikhi children, they may choose to do Sikhi. If they have a large Hindu Dharma population, they may choose to do the Hindu Dharma. So making sure that actually, and it was one of the comments that came through earlier, that there would be a Dharmic study in Key Stage 1, even though it can be done through the thematic units in Key Stage 1, making sure that there is a very systematic study of a Dharmic unit, and then putting the same, therefore, into Key Stage 2 and into Key Stage 3.
And then we just wanted to say that, sorry, we thought it was, it would be good to adopt this because it's kind of like future-proofing it. As you said, there is the research and the curriculum going into Ofsted for the next, and there might be a national curriculum coming along, so therefore you don't want to change it too much now, but you want to enable teachers to be mindful of their context that they're in. Thank you.
Thank you for that, most helpful. Group C, please.
Yeah, thank you. So a couple of points from a couple of different sort of positions. One was regarding the children themselves. What age should be the right age to introduce politics and religion, or religion and politics, you know? And for the most part, we've sort of kept those kind of conversations at the Key Stage 3, more the Key Stage 4 and 5, actually. But we, you know, and this is now introducing the second sort of point of perspective. Actually, the syllabus requires that there should be a consistent building up of knowledge and understanding for all students, and actually students enter at different baselines of that knowledge about their own religion, as well as their practice of it or their awareness of it. As teachers, we can't stop students from asking questions. In fact, we want them to ask more questions, but actually there's a clear lack of teacher subject knowledge to be able to answer those questions. And so we've got a state here, and I'm really sort of just trying to draw out this, that we should be aware of this going forward in terms of what the SACRI is also responsible in being able to provide for schools and for teachers. That the students themselves are needing really good pedagogy, really good experiences of religious education, so that they can build on disciplinary and personal knowledge. But teachers don't even have the subject knowledge. And so, you know, really that's the crux of it here. And I'm, in relation to the syllabi that have been put forward, the 2 different curriculums, the A+ is one that we're sort of supporting more of. But if we were to go with that one, would we just be replicating the same issues that we already have with the current agreed syllabus? And so, question and comment. But I think the comment is really important to bring us to awareness of this, how we're stepping into this. And the question might be something you can kind of answer now, or something that we might be able to answer later.
Okay, do you want to respond?
I can respond.
Please.
To say that in terms of our steps moving forward, we recognise that as well, and we recognise from our teachers that they too have a lack of confidence in delivery of some subjects, and we want to support them with that. And I'm in a privileged position to be able to support teachers currently, and they're very open at having that dialogue. And I've got a direct line to this organisation now that then can commission some specialists to support our teachers. So yes. And also we want to develop a relationship with the SACRE, with our schools. And so you represent the faiths, and so you are the experts in this, but how we manage that is something that we need to consider moving forward. So we've already got 2 dates in place that we're going to present to you in terms of the launch event, in which we'd like SACRE to come along to that to meet the teachers. We'll be there to present the syllabus. You'll be there to introduce yourselves as SACRE members, and that's how we're going to build upon things. So that is the intention. But what that looks like, we need to be guided by you on that. And I'm very minded of time.
Okay, and what was your recommendation in terms of the curriculum?
Yeah, we were more inclined towards A+,
Okay.
you know.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Okay, Group D, please.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you very much for the presentation and the information about the syllabus and all of that and all the information we've received. I have to say that I feel I've been on SACRA since May, 12 months, and I feel I'm finally doing what I thought I would be doing on SACRA, but I'm desperately concerned that we're trying to squeeze all of this into one meeting. This doesn't feel right. This feels like what we should have been doing for the last 12 months, and that we need more time. We can't, we meet here once, 3 times a year. The different groups only meet in this setting as, Group A. I'm sure the 3 of you who are here today don't normally meet and discuss these things. So whilst in principle, Group D is happy to support A+, because it feels that it gives a broader world view and incorporates a greater breadth. And that's the reason we would be happy with it. I was concerned at the beginning that we're thinking, is it just more of the same? But in order to make it relevant for Derby, I'm going to propose that we need more time, all of us, to discuss this. And I'm going to ask whether we could have an extraordinary meeting in January where we could have further discussion to deep dive into this. Because I feel this is really important. This is what we're here for. And we just need more time to do it well. This is going to impact the teaching of RE for all the children of Derby, whatever their cultural, ethnic, religious background or none. Well, they all have cultural and ethnic, whatever about religious backgrounds. And we really need to get it right. So I'm going to ask whether everybody would be happy to have an extraordinary meeting specifically around this in January, so that we can do a better job that we can do in this short time.
Thanks, Councillor Ashby.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would very much agree with that proposal. I confess I've come to this meeting a little unprepared, which is obviously my responsibility. I'm very happy with the way this meeting the committee has been developing into addressing some of these because they're quite contentious in some ways, but very serious issues, which matter to all of us. We all have opinions on many of the issues that have been raised. And I would welcome more time to reflect and more time for us to have debate, because I feel if we just try to resolve it this evening, I've been out all day, so perhaps I'm just too tired. Everybody else is not feeling so tired, but I feel that it'll just be, it could be very unsatisfactory, and it may even become even more contentious as people are trying to emphasise their point rather than seek those points of commonality. But so I just support that proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My reading of the feedback so far meeting is that all the groups except Group A have said in principle that they're happy to support A+. Group A is not particularly fussed either way. I don't know whether we can take that, whether we now need to formally vote, ask each group to formally vote. I think, yeah, go on.
And so there's been a proposal.
Yes, yes, I'm going to come to that. I'm going to come to that. I'm just summarising.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to give the advice that perhaps in terms of a proposal to set things back, that perhaps officers are given the opportunity to kind of say what that means more broadly for the implementation of the syllabus. But I think that question about an extraordinary meeting should come before having a vote on the syllabus, because...
yes, absolutely. Okay, so the idea for an extraordinary meeting, officers, what are your thoughts?
It's the intention to facilitate a launch event with our schools in April, to be ready for September. The stumbling block will be the preparation of those materials. So what could be done is the developments that have come from today's meeting could be incorporated into, because syllabus A has been the one that's been the focus, it would seem. So those adaptations can be made and presented and discussed at the January extraordinary meeting. However, the focus would be on that syllabus then, and the developments and how we could tweak that. So if in principle we could agree a syllabus and then work on that, because it's not our intention to say this is the final model, it's just if we said no at that meeting to that syllabus, then we would be in a very challenging position to have teachers to prepare the materials and do what we needed to in preparation for a September start. As a classroom practitioner myself, I would want at least a year, and already we've not got that, and so it just makes me a little bit nervous. I don't know if you want to add anything there.
Yeah, I mean, what I can do is take away the comments from tonight, build them into a revised syllabus A+ for Derby, which we can then get out to, or send out to members, if that's what you want me to do, in preparation for the January meeting, so that time to look at those amendments. So it would include the CKey units, would include the comment about the inclusion of where they would be in Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2. I would look at the Islam units, particularly as it's my specialism, and see where those are as well. It is one of my issues around having to teach Islam. We were talking earlier about only using Arabic terms, make sure they're fully understood. So we can make those amendments that you've made tonight and send those out. I can work on those and get those ready for a January date.
Councillor Martin, please, did you want to say
Well,
something?
look, I don't feel incredibly strongly about this. So, well, I do in some ways, but I acknowledge because I can't always attend because I'm a cabinet member, I acknowledge that I'm not as engaged as some other people. But comments have been made which, some of us don't necessarily fully agree with, or so the idea that you just incorporate them. I mean, I'm not saying they're invalid comments, they're really valuable contributions, but we haven't discussed them, or, it might be, profit. I understand that people probably feel that everybody's quite busy and maybe they don't want to turn this into an academic exercise.
No, it's not.
So, but I think your proposal is a valid one in the sense that if it were possible this evening to agree in principle which syllabus, because there seems to be some unanimity about that, and then just come back and have more discussion about where the tweaking would be, rather than some just ready acceptance as if that's the view of the whole committee, unless the committee works by way of that everybody individually says something and unless there's no collective judgment from within the committee, then I think we need more discussion is my point. Thank you.
Okay, good. Councillor Ashby.
Just wanted to briefly say the reason I suggested January, and I hope it could be after the 15th because I'm away until then, is so that we could stick with your time frame of the launch and all of that, and that would be that's why January was the suggestion for the program.
Okay. I really do think we need to have an agreement as to whether we're all happy to go with one of the two syllabi. So I think we need to get some firm agreement, and then we can consider the proposal of having an extraordinary meeting to continue with the necessary discussion about points and observations that have been raised.
Sorry, just to play devil's advocate. Let's say for argument's sake, okay, we've revised the syllabus A. And for whatever reason, somebody's not happy. Does that mean we default to syllabus B? How is that going to work then?
Yes, that is always a possibility. But I should imagine that some of the observations that have been raised probably would also need to be considered for the other syllabus. Because there is, particularly some of the points you've made, the omissions are there in both. Yeah, okay.
Also, I think in the second reading, we'd have to approve each of the amendments. So we may have to vote on all of those if we were going to incorporate them on a syllabus that we've already agreed.
Okay. How we progress with this. Shall we agree the syllabus, and then we go on to consider an extended period of time for further discussion, and the point that's just been made about agreeing the points that have been raised, because some of the points people may be in agreement with and others may not be. Yeah, go on, Jack.
In terms of decision making, I'd suggest it's completely right to think about amendments as something that the committee, having, should you want to kind of follow this line of going with A+, that there would be a presentational question for officers in terms of how we bring back what the syllabus looks like and making it and turning it into certain amendments. And I think the kind of categories there will be based on perhaps the specific points that have been raised about particular religions or something like that. But I think it's right. I think that doesn't stop the conference from being able to say, in principle, follow this syllabus, and then look at amendments, and we can look at what that kind of picture looks like for you.
That may be so, but some of the comments and feedback, not everybody will agree with them. So we will have to find a way of how we have the discussion and debate with respect to the points raised. Okay.
Yeah, the officers are going to need to do an amendment. I think we can agree that it's syllabus A+.
Yes,
I don't think there's any difficulty with that. But then, and I don't think January is enough time for the officers to make the amendments, because what I think would make sense is that the amendments are made, they are circulated beforehand in sufficient time, and then we have maybe an extraordinary meeting, because it's not going to have the same impact of changing your timetable for delivery, but of tweaking and refining can happen maybe a little bit later to give you a chance to do the refinement, be circulated, and then we come back and then we can tweak it as it goes.
Where people may not agree with the points, some of the points that have been raised.
Well, once they, I just, if I hear correctly, it has to be done before the 15th of January. I don't think that's enough time.
No.
And so my suggestion is find a little bit later, because in principle the syllabus is agreed.
Yeah, okay.
Find a point later, circulate, and then we can argue it through, because it's not going to substantially change the whole syllabus. It's going to be a refining of something that is there.
Alex, before I take a vote.
Well, I don't think we've agreed any amendments. People have made comments. People have submitted some documents, and that's really, really interesting and great work and a valuable contribution. Some people have actually disagreed with some of the comments in here, so I don't know what, and that's valid. You know, all valid. You know, I'm not, but I don't think we've agreed it, and I know that we can't. You know, there could be a point where you're anticipating, you know, a 6-hour meeting where we end up discussing, you know, each nuance or something. But I don't think we've even hacked at the. You know, we just haven't made. There's been no agreement on any even broad proposal. So
I agree. That is the conundrum that we're faced with. That points have been put forward, suggestions have been put forward for amendments, but we haven't really discussed them and agreed them. So can I? And I don't know how we get around that. But what I want to do is make us to formally make a decision with respect to the curriculum that we're prepared to support. I will ask each group to vote. So, Group A, your vote for the curriculum, A+ or B, please. Can you give me your votes? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So Group A, A+. Group B, please. A+. Group C.
A+.
Thank you. Group D. Okay. Right. The next decision is the extension, an extraordinary meeting to discuss further the. I don't know if I need to. Well, I can use the word refine, because there are observations and points made which we haven't really debated on. But can we in principle agree to have an extraordinary meeting? Is everybody in agreement with an additional meeting?
Yes.
Okay. You do, officers, is that something that you? Well, we will need you there in order to proceed. Okay. And at that extraordinary meeting, what happens there? Will you bring back a document with refinement? What will be incorporated in the document? What will the document look like? Please.
We will endeavour to incorporate some of the suggestions that have been made today, but we'll need to circulate that in advance for you to then be able to provide feedback. And so then we could have a discussion, debate around that, if that's an agreement. So maybe January for the extraordinary meeting is a little bit ambitious. Would we need, because we'd need to have time to be able to make the amendments in January for then colleagues to have the opportunity to debate, to explore them. So, Ian.
January's fine. January should not be an issue. As I say, I can work on it over the holidays, incorporate some of the discussions we've had, and then they can be ones that we can do. I mean, you and I will need to meet as well to go through them.
Yes, so and then we'll Jack.
So realistically, you're thinking. Just a minute, please. Okay, Alison, and then Councillor, Councillor Martin, please.
I repeat my point, we haven't agreed any amendments. It's just been a few people have made a few comments. So, I mean, I would suggest that we come back with I mean, then everyone's got time. They've had time to see comments that were written, spent now. They've had time to reflect on the comments that have already been made in the room. And there will be an opportunity for other people to make their written submissions, if you like, because, I mean, I didn't know, you know, like if, might have been useful to know in advance that some people are making written submissions, which tends to frame a certain debate. Others are just making odd comments in the room. So I'd suggest that then everybody has more time to then formulate their contribution, and that's discussed at the at that January meeting, and then the amendments can be made. But yeah, I know he has. But with respect, Claire, I mean, I'm just going to say this, and then I'm going to shut up because you know, it's where everybody's finally a bit tired of this. But people made comments, but I didn't, you know, personally, I didn't respond to them because I didn't realise that they were going to be then taken as the definitive amendment. I just thought there were people making comments. So people have made comments. That's good. But I'm suggesting is that we have another meeting. And the people are then able to make further comments. It's not like everything that's been said today is what we debate then. I mean, I think there should be an opportunity to make further comments if people want to, you know, add additional points. Otherwise, I would have responded in this meeting more to some of the comments that have been made.
Councillor Ashby?
Sorry, that's what I had put my hand up to say was, hold on. You don't need to make amendments yet because no amendments have been agreed. So can we, I mean, perhaps what we need is for either Jack or Group A to circulate what their thoughts are so that when we come back in January, we either could all circulate our thoughts or we come more prepared to actually discuss the nitty-gritty of the different suggestions that all the different groups have.
My understanding, I think, of this debate is about whether amendments are being made and whether when we talk about officers coming back with amendments, whether they're kind of finalised. They're not. I think the suggestion, as I understand it from Shaheen and Ian, is that there would just be some further information provided for the conference about ways that the syllabuses can be extended based on the discussion, and that would just be a prompt for the conference for discussion. It's not something that you voted upon. It's not kind of a final. It's this or nothing. It's a prompt based on the discussion today for that further discussion around these particular issues. And I guess these issues that have come up, there have been certain topics that have mostly come up, and I guess that's where Shaheen and Ian are able to take that forward. So it's not that these amendments are kind of finalised, it's that they're providing some basis for the conference to kind of think about what's being proposed.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, only that I think the comments about not being able to discuss it and put forward ideas and having more time, but I think this was sent out a significant amount of time ago to be able to make those comments. So I don't know if we're sort of wanting more time, but we have already had some time. I agree that we can't say, you know, oh yes, we definitely want these, you know, the things that have been discussed tonight. I agree with the idea of the them being sort of worked on and then being presented to us so we can then discuss whether that works for people or not. But I do think that there's a responsibility to have read that and to have come ready with those comments today, really.
I note that some of the comments that have been made here today have been noted and will be looked at, you know, especially those which are relevant to subject specialisms in terms of different religious denominations and how they are presented on the syllabi and the curriculum. But I think my comments were more different than that. Mine were more sort of leaning towards like pedagogical interests and how teacher training will happen and things like that. And actually, I think that leans more into the legal duty of the SACRE. And so I'd like some work to be done around that. Now, if that requires me to put what I've said in writing to make it very clear, I think it's important enough for me to do that, and I'm happy to do that. But I don't think the doors should be closed on us having a little bit of a window to be able to have another look at that and give us a bit more time to look a bit more in depth, having had this meeting and heard other colleagues, to then be able to come back and also comment on whether it's the religious issues or whether it's the pedagogical issues or the teacher training issues, if that would be an amicable suggestion.
Yes, that's very helpful. I think you also talked about resources as well, the resourcing of the curriculum, which is obviously is very important. I think in terms of decision going forward, let's just reiterate what decision's been made, agreed so far, that we all accepted in principle to go with curriculum A+. We've agreed that we will have an extended period to have further discussions. The comments, feedback we've had so far are noted and circulated, and the additional meeting will be an opportunity for further comments, further feedback, and even discussion and debates on the points that have been shared at this meeting. Does that seem a reasonable way forward?
Yes,
Yeah?
and only to add that maybe at that meeting then we could vote on those amendments to see which ones will go forward and which ones...
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, in practical terms, what are the officers able to do in terms of getting information out to members, giving members, once again, a further opportunity to give further feedback? What does that look like practically for you two, please?
I suppose I just need to seek clarity on some of the areas that we've discussed in terms of the CKEY section that we've talked about. So should those amendments that have been suggested be made to syllabus A+ and then presented to you, even though they've not necessarily been agreed? So if we make those amendments, we're happy for that, and then we'll present it, and then they'll be voted upon when we come back. That's the intention, isn't it? And this, in terms of what Eve had raised, we felt we could add some dialogue as to why maybe that couldn't happen. But if other people have got some suggestions that they've not been able to feed back today, if you could just let us know areas in which you feel like amendments need to be made. Whilst we recognise it won't be that's not the agreed syllabus at the time, we're going to discuss that in January. So, but you'll need to have ample time to be able to do that. And in terms of timescales, Jack, I'm just thinking about the feasibility of when we'll be able to make the amendments, have the meeting, give colleagues time the SACRE time to process, and then have a discussion. So we just need to confirm timelines about that, won't we?
Shall I
Yes,
comment?
yes,
Yes, we can facilitate that. I guess that would perhaps be a discussion to take offline, and that I would email the SACRE and ask for availability, and it would be taking into account things like notice periods, kind of five clear working days, what we tend to do, and on top of that, it's accepting that it's also a difficult time over the festive period for some people to be able to do work. So there's also that needs to be taken into consideration as well.
Yeah, of course, but people are given information about the deadline and the pressing matter. So I'm hoping if people wish to feedback, in addition to what we already have, please do so as soon as you're able to.
Thank you.
Okay. In terms of whether you start incorporating, I would say just send a list of amendments, just circulate a list of amendments and not incorporate. Just do that because because I do think there ought to be an opportunity for each point or amendment to be discussed and agreed on.
Okay, to track changes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
May I just share some dates?
Okay, sharing. Anything further before dates are shared? Imran, did you want to say something briefly? Yes. He's saying that March is the period of Ramadan. Could we shift the date? Well, the document has to be launched in April, so it's not practical, feasible for us to shift the date. We're always going to come up against these things, unfortunately, but we have to have a curriculum ready for the schools for September.
Maybe we could have a look at just the timings on that day so that we can be finished before sunset, if that's okay. Yeah.
Absolutely, we'll do what we can.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further to add? Jack has been making notes of the comments, observations, which will be circulated in due course along with what you've received already. And please, I urge you to please feed back your thoughts in the meantime.
Sorry, just one last thing. I'm thinking more about the religious groups here. Obviously, the
We're all religious groups.
A lot of people within the community are going to want to know the outcome of what's happened today. Maybe some of them might even want to look into the curriculum as well. So once it's been revised, given the amendments that we've come up with, what's the process there? How do we kind of make other people aware about what's to come?
Can I say, I think it's important that the ownership is with this body first, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Because we've had observations, suggestions for amendments, and we really haven't had time to discuss them in detail. So I would prefer if the ownership is with this group, and once we've decided, then of course we can then circulate.
After we decided,
please allow us to the ownership of this process. Thank you. Right. Go on.
Okay, so in terms of practicalities moving forward, I just wanted to share the launch dates with you, so they're in your diary, if that's... I've come up with 2 days. I just wanted to see if there were any clashes on either of those dates, and then we could just agree on those in principle. Well, no, we need to agree, not in principle. So the 2 dates proposed are either the 23rd of April or the 30th of April. It will be in this venue, and it will be for our teachers facilitating, but we think it's important SACRE attend as well. So can anybody see any issues with either of those dates?
When's that?
It'll be throughout the day. It'll be a whole day event. Yes, it will be a whole day event. So either the 23rd or the 30th of April are the proposed dates. It will be during working hours. It will be school hours. So it will be potentially a 9 till 3. Yes, please. Yeah, go.
I think the 30th of April would be preferable.
Okay.
Just because of head teacher recruitment, and quite often they're in April, before the end of April. So that third week of April, there might be
other
things going on.
Okay, so 30th. Has anybody got any objections to the 30th of April? Because that will be the day in which it will be then.
What have I got?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
30th of April then.
Oh, I don't know. There was a hand from Councillor
Yes, go on.
Martin.
We'll move whatever.
I don't object, but I would just like to register now that, especially as I've been so keen to express my views this evening. I have a couple of meetings that day that I cannot miss. They're cabinet meetings, but I will kind of come in around it just to make make people aware of that now, in case people think not turning up having.
So the 30th, though, that's great.
Okay.
Sorry, did you want?
Carry on.
Yeah,
No,
so
carry on. Anything
in
else?
terms of our statutory duties with LA maintained schools, to which we have, it's either 34 or 35, I always get it mixed up. So we just need to determine, will we be purchasing the syllabus for just our LA maintained schools, or are we going to offer the agreed syllabus to our academies? And if we're going to offer it to the academies, would we do so by purchasing it for it and giving it to them, or would we ask them to opt into that? Because our academies don't need to follow our agreed syllabus because they are academies. Our LA maintained schools do. So our proposal is based on the funding that Sharon, our Director of Education, has secured for us. We will purchase the agreed syllabus for our LA maintained schools. We'll give them a PDF copy that will entitle them to CPD opportunities because there are LA schools. But it's a decision around what we're going to do for our academies, because there's an implication, a piece of work that needs to be undertaken. Then I'll need to make contact with those schools, confirm which schools would like the syllabus, but the SACRE needs to determine other local authorities get academies to purchase their agreed syllabus from SACRE, from us, or we could just give it to them. I just wondered what your thoughts were around that, because we'll
Any
need
thoughts that we should basically help them all to spread the word and give them a copy each?
If we give it to them rather than sell it to them, will they be more likely to, adopt it? That's the question, really, isn't it? I think.
In the past, and she knows I was chair of SACRE in Greater Manchester, we did provide it to the academies and they did follow it. And that way it really helped with transition from Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2 into Key Stage 3. So that way, and I say when I was chair of the SACRE myself, it was very much around the idea that we were bothered as a SACRE that what we were building in Key Stage 2, where there were not many academies, but we were a very, very highly academised local authority. We wanted that continuation in learning, and that for us, pupil progression was the paramount importance, so that's why we did provide it for them.
Absolutely.
And maybe as a follow-up, that you said with the LA schools have the training. Would the training also be given to the?
That was the question I was going to follow.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Martin,
Well, we only have one secondary school in the city.
Yes.
I believe, that isn't.
We do. Well, but in the DFE family of schools, we've got Murray Park and we've got the Respect collaboration. So they would be that we would purchase the curriculum for them as well. So
right, but there are very few
secondary
non-academised secondaries. That's my point.
Yes.
So in that case, I think it ought to be the action. If SACRE, the committee, is to have validity, and some of the more intense points we've discussed seem to me to be probably more relevant to secondary education than primary, then, if there's any point in having those debates, then it seems to me that we should do whatever it is which would encourage the schools to use the curriculum.
yes. Councillor Ashby.
I was going to say our desire is that all schools would use it. Therefore, if possible, we should facilitate that in the way that you, from your experience, I think, best see fit. But will it be at much extra cost to the council?
That's the other consideration. So what I could do is, RE today have agreed that each syllabus should be £70 each, but they're going to do us a deal at 35, aren't you, Ian? So we've got it at cost. However, there is a cost implication, and I just have some hesitance. If schools aren't going to utilise that resource, why should we pay for it? So I feel like maybe a piece of work needs to be undertaken with the academies to see, will they utilise that resource? Because actually, otherwise, this is money that could be utilised elsewhere, and that's what, but I just wanted to gauge the views of what you wanted us to do, because we can't direct academies to use this resource. We can highly recommend it, but that is their choice as an academy. And so, but I can share the numbers with you in terms of what the breakdown would be.
Well, given the comment from the experienced teacher earlier about some academies having a poor syllabus, I think we would want, if possible, to encourage them to receive a gift of a syllabus.
Cheryl, please, and then we really need to draw the meeting to a conclusion.
It was going to be what Shaheen had said about, I think if it was offered out to them, and to see whether they were interested, then that would be useful. But I wondered whether or not targeting the faith academies like DDAT and Sir Ralph Sherwin, etc., because they are the faith schools that may well be worthwhile taking that up, offering it to them to see how they've got, and just to say that Respect goes to an academy January the 1st.
Is that being confirmed?
It has to us, but I know that your department doesn't. I don't want to say.
Okay, so what's our decision? That we will obviously copies to our schools that are within our remit, and we would also offer to the academies at a discounted price. Is that what we're agreeing?
I'm just an offer here. If there's, I'm happy as a cabinet member to try and take this issue. If there is an issue about funding, I'm happy to try and take this through and make an argument for finding the extra funding to give, if that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, that's helpful.
There's funding available.
Right.
It's just...
Okay, that's very helpful. So we've agreed that the academy schools will get a copy.
They'll get a copy for free.
For free.
If they get it.
Well, that's another debate, and perhaps.
No, this is what Shaheen said. We'll find out if they were going to use it.
Yeah, so I'll bring that back in January.
Okay, well, that's very helpful. Okay, any further points? Did you want to reiterate some of our decisions? I think we're clear about decisions we've made today. Any further points? It's nearly 7 o'clock. My goodness, you've all been so committed to this meeting. Any further points? Okay, well, thank you all for your commitment to this. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank our advisors, Shaheen and Ian, for steering us and guiding us through the meeting in terms of the curriculum, the proposed curriculum, and thank you for your tolerance in terms of getting the process right. I also would like to thank Jack for being dumped at the deep end. Here. I don't think there was a note left in the drawer for you, was there, Jack? He's had to make it up, and I've had to make it up with him as we go along. So thank you all, and wish you all the best for the festive season.